I was a student of Ginsberg. Anyone? How many people actually knew him here?
Woo! Yeah. Go Ellen!
Good, yeah.
Hum, hum, hum!
Anyway, I was looking for a title of my book, so I couldn't come up with one, so I stole one from Alan. Armed Madhouse. The soul should never die ungodly in an Armed Madhouse. You can't fight that, so I took it.
You should do a record.
But how I became a, just, then I'll get out of your way, but how I became a student of Alan was that actually I was a student about 9-10 years ago, just before he died. And I was going through my 8th midlife crisis and deciding whether I should become a investigative reporter or a poet. So I showed Ginsberg my poetry and he said, "You'd make a great investigative reporter." And I'm stuck. But I first ran into him when he was having a gathering for his students at Brooklyn College. And I went with one of them to his house. And I showed up, the only people that showed up on time, and he said, knocked the door, and I said, I'm here for your, for the dinner you're holding for your students. He said, "Dinner for my students? Oh, yeah, oh, I think so, yeah. Is that tonight?" I said, "Do you have any food?" He said, and he said, "Let's look in the cupboard." And we opened these cupboards, and every cupboard was empty except for one single jar of mustard. I kid you not. And then in the refrigerator, the only thing was there was this huge corned beef, So I ran home, and I had a party like before, and I grabbed some stuff and from my own refrigerator, brought it back, and my wife said, "What the hell are you doing, taking all the food out of the refrigerator?" I said, "Well, Allen Ginsberg is having a dinner party and he doesn't have any food." He said, "What a fucking asshole. He gets his own fucking food." It was a thought, but something drove me. And when I showed up with the food, he said, "I knew something would arrive." And then the students showed, and they immediately ignored him. So he sat at a table where all the food was laid out, and sat at the edge and just gathered a bunch of food around him. And he filled up a plate higher than with more than it could handle, and the food started falling on the floor. And I said, "Your food's dropping on the floor." And he said, "Well, what do I do about that?" I said, "Do you have a mop or something?" He said, "Maybe." And so he had his head down, like this, looking at the plate of food, completely ignoring everyone else. And there was a bunch of students sat around the table, and one of his students started talking about how it was very difficult. And I'm thinking, why would anyone, by the way, take poetry from this jerk, right? He's just totally absorbed in this food, just eating it like this, not looking up. And this student is talking away, saying, "I was working in the post office, and I couldn't write. I was just blocked. I just couldn't write anything, just working in the post office." And I'm thinking, Robert Musil, Charles Bukowski, but I didn't want to say anything. But the student kept going on about how he couldn't work in the post office. He couldn't write anything. He was blocked. No poetry. And finally, he said, "Is that your fault?" Talk about the gun. "Okay, Alan, be quiet." His hands were on the keys. Is that spooky or what? So that student was blocked. He was jammed. He couldn't write his fucking poetry. And finally said, but then I got a new job, and now I can write. I'm unblocked. And I thought, what was this kind of like enema job that he got? And I said, "Well, what is this new job that you got?" He says, "I'm released." He said, I'm a messenger. I'm a bicycle messenger." I said, "Oh, okay." And then suddenly, Ginsberg's head snapped up from his food, and he focused on the guy. And he looked at him. He's silent. He just grabbed him by the eyes. And he said, "What did your father do?" And the guy said, Oh, he was a messenger. And he said, went back to his food. I said, sign me up for his class right now. Thanks a lot.